Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome you once again this evening to the airwaves of Salam Media. Wednesday night it is with myself, Inayat Wadi, as we welcome all our listeners, our viewers on the various platforms of Salam Media this evening. And wonderful that you are able to join us on this Wednesday evening. Now, South Africa is still reeling from the shock of the tragedy that had struck the building out in Marshalltown, where we've seen many people, sadly, who had lost their lives. There were many people that were injured as well. And our condolences still go to the victims' families and their close ones, their loved ones. And we've seen the images of the burials that have been taking place, mass burials. And once again, another shocker for South Africa, another shocker for the city of Johannesburg. Now, this is the economic hub of South Africa, a city that is often termed as a world-class African city. But is this really the case? And once again, we've seen so much come through by way of the aftermath and the shock that people are still in. And when one looks at the legacy that Marshalltown or this building will leave behind, some have actually described it as a legacy of one of humiliation, injustice, and racism. We've also seen the government now rolling out the big guns as to who should be blamed for this deadly fire, this disaster that had taken place. And once again, we've seen the comments come through where we look at fingers being pointed, and we've seen it in the immediate aftermath, where we've seen fingers being pointed at the likes of NGOs, and also looking at the government, how much responsibility has the government taken? Because some are actually saying that this is all points out to major government failures at all levels. We've heard of former Concord Justice C.C. Kampepe, who will lead the inquiry into this deadly Marshalltown fire. Now, all of this, at the end of the day, playing out in the background. But in the meanwhile, many lives have been lost, many people have been injured. And to the extent that some survivors actually say that the gates on the first 3 floors were actually locked, so they couldn't get out. So these are some of the issues that are surfacing in the aftermath of this deadly fire that had taken place. And this is the reason why we are analyzing, we are unpacking the aftermath of the Marshalltown fire tonight. Now, my guest tonight, and coming up on screen, we've got Edward Molopi, who is with the Socio-Economic Rights Institute of South Africa, SERI. We've got Amir Sheikh, African Diaspora Forum, and we've got Mpho Dagada, who is with Arise South Africa. So to all three of you, I see you, Edward, on top of the screen. Good evening to you, and welcome to the show.
Good evening, brother Inayat.
Good evening, and thank you so much for having us.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening.
Good evening, brother Inayat, to you and to the listeners of Salam Media.
And President Mpho Dagada, good evening to you, sir. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you so much, and good evening to all your listeners.
Right, Edward, I see you at the top of the screen, so I'm going to start off with you. And it is clear, as we are discussing, as we are unpacking and analyzing the aftermath of the Marshalltown fire. Now, clearly, this is a shocker. But again, we're not surprised. We've seen many tragedies occurring, particularly in the city of Johannesburg. We've just heard yesterday of another gas explosion. We know what had happened in Bree Street prior to the Marshalltown tragedy. And a lot has actually been taking place. And at the end of the day, when we see fingers being pointed, and we know people's lives have been lost, people's livelihoods, people, whatever they've owned for their entire life, all of it, when one puts into perspective, it is a tragedy of mammoth proportions.
Yes, I mean, it certainly is. Loss of life can never be taken lightly. I mean, this is one tragedy where we've lost a huge, amount of people. And we must convey our condolences to the families of those who have lost their loved ones, and also continue to, put our prayers for those who are in, who've suffered injuries because of of this particular incident. Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those tragedies that should, if anything, be a wake-up call for us, particularly as a city and those who govern within the city, to ensure that such tragedies never happen again, by ensuring that the basic services and the needs of residents are looked into, and that conditions that have led or at least have it helped in terms of this situation, that those conditions be attended to, and that people will be able to live in buildings that are safe for human habitation.
Yes, thank you for that, Edward. And let's just bring President Mpho Dagada in. Now, Mpho, looking at the people who inhabited this building in particular, these were not lazy people. These were not irresponsible people. And they are people that obviously, given the conditions that they were living in, they would give it all to live under better conditions. And at the end of the day, these are people that are helpless. They have been desperate. Now, this is just one building. And we know right across the entire city, in fact, there are many, many more buildings where people, out of desperation, have got absolutely no choice. And they're actually forced under the condition to live in the conditions that they did.
Yeah, it's a very sad situation what's going on in the city of Johannesburg. And I think the first and foremost thing is the fact that we are not dealing with 1 or 2 or 3 lives. We are actually dealing with 77 lives, including the lives of children. And one thing that we understand is that there is no value or price to a life. And the big thing that everybody is upset about, and mostly at Arise South Africa, is the fact that there seems to be no accountability for the lives that were lost. Our biggest concern is the fact that we don't want a situation where this happens again and we sit again and we talk. The fact that no one is owning up to it, the fact that it's a blame game, the fact that people are using the courts as excuses, NGOs as excuses, the city's not taking accountability. It's a very frustrating process, because what it shows us is that city officials do not care for the people in the city of Johannesburg. Another deep lying issue that we're finding out is that people are informing us that the rentals were being collected in these buildings. So this is very, very alarming to know that buildings that were supposed to support gender-based violence victims, we're now finding out that actually there were rentals being collected. We're finding out that there were people that were living in there. We're finding out that, there was sort of like a mafia state of extracting money out of the building. We're finding out so many things, and nobody is here to account and explain what is going on. So this is very devastating. We really, really need to get to the bottom of it. And I'm glad that we're having the conversation tonight, because more and more people need to know that there's a gross injustice happening in the city of Johannesburg.
Thank you for that, Mpho. And just to bring Amir Sheikh in now, Amir, you've heard what Mpho had to say. And again, when one looks at people like yourselves, and we're looking at migrant communities in South Africa, and these are people out of desperation that come to South Africa. We know that there are many, obviously, who are here, asylum seekers as well. And the city of Johannesburg is actually full of migrant people. And the key issue here is about exploitation as well, as Mpho has alluded to, mafia-like conditions that they actually live in. And these are people that will pay whatever rental that they are, but at the end of the day, existing in the worst of conditions. And also at the same time, these are families we're talking about. We're not only talking about individuals, but there have been families. We're talking about little children who have actually been raised in these buildings and under these conditions, Amir.
Jazakallah khairan, brother Inayat Wode and fellow panelists. First of all, as actually is in the norm, allow me to also sincerely convey my heartfelt condolence to the families of the 77 victims, who some were even, a mother and a child, or brothers. Families that will not actually get a closure anytime soon, because considering the fact that I have been with the victims and we have been trying to assist them by all means to go and identify actually their loved ones, And up to today, it's actually very difficult. And out of 77, only 12 bodies have actually rightly identified. And of that, at least 7 you have seen is actually the Malawi national, and 8 was identified. And this morning when we woke up, a family of 3, a mother and her 2 daughters from Zimbabwe, were also positively identified. So you can actually see out of 77, only 12 being identified, the rest burning actually beyond recognition. It will mean that these families will not get an easy closure in the coming month. And yesterday, out of the 7 Malawi, there was also a sense where our brothers from Zimbabwe were also claiming that actually the body belongs to them and it was wrongly buried. So of all these issues coming, the closure may not be actually soon. But what I allude with my other fellow panelists is the city is not, or the government at all 3 tiers of government, be it at national level, provincial level, and municipal level, are not taking actually accountable of what have happened. Besides that, they're also actually doing the blame game, blaming actually the progressive leaders who have been assisting these migrants who live in such deplorable lives, and telling them that instead of actually sending them away, at least give them an alternative. And now they have become the enemy of the state, especially the city. And I'm talking of the Social Economic Research Institute, lawyers actually, that they were actually sending fingers to them. So the situation, Brother Inayat, is actually very deplorable. In the condition they lived, it was a deplorable. They were paying rent. Besides that, we were also told they were paying a security fee, which is an extortion type, so that at least they can actually live in that building. But overall, at least whatever happened had happened. We will not leave it there. We will make sure at least the family get closure in this, and then others are reintegrated back. And in the last 3 days, at least we have assisted not less than 28 actually families to reintegrate back, or even actually find a place where they at least could actually call it a home, considering the fact that of all the number that have actually been affected, 130, majority from Zimbabwe and actually Malawi and Tanzania, who did not have proper documentation, could not go to shelters for fear that at least they will be taken to Lindela Repatriation Center, where at least they can easily be deported back home. So at least we have to find alternative shelter for them, and we will try with the others. The only challenge now we have is that there are others still who are not finding shelters and who are still camped opposite the Usindiso building. And unfortunate, I can say this today, they haven't actually eaten anything, and the organization that promised us food actually could not actually honor their promises. So this is a challenge that we will live with, but we actually optimistic. At least there will be actually, a light at the end of the tunnel. But our greatest fear is not actually what happened at Usindiso, is the fact that 3 executive member of the mayoral committee were yesterday out and looking actually in the building. And by the way they are going and the sentiment actually they made, we are optimistic. Very soon we will have thousands of migrants on the street again, courtesy of the city, the uncaring.
Well, definitely. And also, I think, Edward, one of the reasons why we see this happening is people are vulnerable. They're vulnerable in more ways than one, and mainly as a result of poverty. And together with poverty, we see a lot playing out in the background. We see a dysfunctional immigration system. We see the lack of poor service delivery. We see poor law enforcement. We see corruption. Now, all of this, at the end of the day, have made these people targets of the criminals. And it does appear, and also from what Mpho is talking, and also Amir Sheikh talking of the 3 tiers of government, that the criminals seem to be better organized than the government and the officials, considering the fact that this building was literally even owned by the city of Johannesburg.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, because if you look at the fact that this building is owned by the city, and it played such an important role in terms of, catering to what's the needs of people who, particularly women and children, who needed assistance, and it provided that facility as a shelter. And the fact that it was let to go in this kind of way, such that the building itself was lost. I think that's a huge indictment on the city and the people who are supposed to be looking out after these buildings. But yeah, I think of more concerning, of course, is the fact that there seems to be, a targeted approach now that's being to basically remove more people from their homes and their places of residence because of what has happened. I think it is now being used as an opportunity to basically, take action against other people who find themselves in a similar situation.
Yes, and also, Mpho, when you look at these people, it's not that they have other choices, because if they had a better choice, they wouldn't be living in a building that is unsafe. They wouldn't suffer the indignity of living in poverty by living in buildings like this. This is out of desperation. And the key issue here is about shelter, and shelter is a basic human right. The key issue is what type of shelter, because these are people that were paying in that buildings. And I'm sure that if better shelter or accommodation was provided, these people would still be paying. Instead of paying it to the criminals, they would possibly pay it to whoever is responsible for setting up the shelters. So all of this put into perspective, again, tells us that there isn't a thoughtful plan, there isn't a humane plan. Because when one looks at this building in particular, around 2017, if my memory serves me right, this building was raided by the authorities. There were 140 odd arrests that were actually made at that point in time, and people were allowed to then get back. And this is the result we see. We see this tragedy that has occurred.
I think one of the biggest issues that we see in government today, it is a lack of ubuntu. The fact that public officials forget the human side of things. And this is a very, very serious situation, because when you look at what a politician is, by definition, according to the dictionary, a politician is somebody who uses the resources of state to answer the need of the people. That's what a politician is. It is to serve. That's the definition of a politician, to serve the people by using the resources of state to answer the needs of the people. And what we are seeing in the city of Johannesburg, it is the other way around. It's like they are using the resources of the state to serve the mouths of the politicians. We are seeing something that is completely evil. And even when you look at what's going on in the city of Johannesburg, you can begin to see that things are not going right because of the things that's being done. The wickedness that's being done is far too much in the city. And that's why we are conscientizing people to say, we need to open up our minds when it comes to voting. We need to vote on the results that we see, and not based on past history or past struggle or those things. We need to vote based on what is it that you are going to do to change the situation. This has been a very big eye-opener for many people. The way that people reacted, the way that people spoke. We had government ministers saying things, we had mayors saying things, and really what we were losing out of everything that they were saying, we were losing that element of being a human being, the element of love, which I believe that this country was founded on that basis, to say that when we enshrined our constitution, we were saying that we're going to be a country that's ruled on these ethos and these values. And really what we're seeing is that we've seen an erosion of these ethos and these values. And we're seeing, bluntly put, we're seeing criminals that continue to be criminal month after month. And it's up to you and I and every citizen that's viewing us to make sure that we register to vote, and we vote according to what will be done. We vote according to what we are seeing. Because it's not enough that we just talk about it. We must take the extra step. We must ensure that we cause a change in the future.
Yes, and also, Amir, I'm sure that you've had a lot of experience. You've had a lot of exposure to migrants from all over the Africa and also around the world coming into South Africa. And we have this idea idea that migrants benefit from South Africa because they don't have documents. They are undocumented. But now that obviously is no argument, because being undocumented in any country doesn't mean that you need to be exploited, doesn't mean that you need to be vulnerable. And perhaps, you could just share some more light and give us an insight as to what these migrants actually go through in this country, particularly in a city like Johannesburg, where you've come now, you're looking for a roof over your head, you're looking for a job, you're looking for some income, you're looking for a plate of food to feed your families.
Brother Inayat, the truth of the matter is, first of all, when we were human and African, the fact was actually, even as per our sayings, that a visitor brings feasting. It is only that when actually a cousin or a family member or an uncle or an aunt visits the home, that actually the family will slaughter and all of us will come together and eat. But that is when we were African and when we were human beings. But when we fail to actually be human being is now when at least we are putting the blames on the most vulnerable people. But if you recall, all these countries that have now developed in the world, be it New York, be it actually London, be it actually Paris, or even here in Johannesburg, it is actually built. This is actually the sweat of actually migrants, especially a country like South Africa. We were not meant actually to complain about actually migration and the effect of migration, because if you look, all of us, even in the panel here, this is one country that's almost 98% of its current citizenry today are of migrant origin, be it white who came from actually the European countries like the Dutch and actually German, or be it actually from France, or be it actually those who are of Indian origin who are fourth, fifth, or sixth generation, or a slave that were actually brought from Malaysia, Indonesia, or many of the black that have migrated actually from countries like actually the Congo actually towards South Africa. So a country that has its 98% of citizenry of migrant origin cannot complain of actually migration and its effect. A visitor always brings visiting. But if you look at the situation of migrants in this country today, the fact of the matter is what a migrant actually encounters, despite actually the documentation he has in the country, whether he's actually asylum seeker, a refugee, permanent resident, or a naturalized citizen, is intimidation, interference, harassment, and extortion. And this is exactly what even in death, actually some of us are actually experiencing, because a disaster of this magnitude could have been actually declared a national disaster. But unfortunately, after the loss of 77 lives, the city itself cannot even declare, be it the province declaring or national actually. But today, everybody actually left. The media and those who are made a lot of anti-migrant sentiment are not there. But those who are left behind are the victims who were even victims when they were in, and those who have got a human heart to actually help. So the unfortunate is we actually part and process of actually the rebuilding of this nation, and what makes it a very beautiful rainbow nation, a term coined by actually Archbishop Desmond Tutu. But at least our politician, who our brother from Rice, South Africa mentioned and Karen, are not seen in that, only is to blame. And one thing, brother, as I conclude, is that, it's very inhuman. On the night, actually, the fateful day that these things have happened, we have seen a groups of actually vigilante groups like Dudula, who are doing at least a sort of actually, demonstration opposite the building. Where is the empathy? Where is the sympathy towards the cause of fellow human beings? Despite whether they were documented or not documented, despite whether they were vulnerable South Africans or actually migrants, these were human and human life was lost. So where is the sympathy toward actually the lost, when actually we are toying and just actually using terminologies like Abafoni, Abahambe, and etc. So this is a situation, but at least a country that is signatory to the Geneva Convention on Refugees and the Organization of African Union must at least wake up and at least make those signatories actually practical and catered for all, irrespective of whether they are documented or not documented.
Yes, and also, thank you for that, Amir. And just to move on to Edward again. Now, Edward, it is clear that nothing that happened at the Marshalltown building at 80 Albert Street was a surprise to the government nor was it outside the control of the government. Now, we've seen over and over again, and I alluded to this in my introduction, the city of Johannesburg, a world-class African city. Now, under the conditions that we see it, does the city actually even earn the right to be called a world-class African city? Last week, I had a discussion with Herman Mashaba, the leader of Action SA, and he was the former mayor of Johannesburg. He served 3 years, and he spoke about a task force that he had then created. He identified 500 buildings in the city of Johannesburg that were ticking time bombs. And after he had left, obviously the task force was disbanded. But we've also seen what has been playing out in the city of Johannesburg, the power struggle. We've seen mayors come, we've seen mayors go, we've seen politicians following the party line rather than taking care of the city. Now, all of this actually put together tells us one thing. Does or begs the question, do the authorities really care?
Yeah, I mean, I wish that I could actually answer that in the affirmative and say that we are seeing signs of a responsive and caring government. But unfortunately, I think the actions are telling us otherwise, that we are not dealing with a responsive and caring government. And I mean, this is not a recent phenomenon. This, I think, is something that has been going on for a number of years, particularly if you look at the fact that, you know, the issues that we are facing the entity of Johannesburg are issues that are not being apparent now, or issues that are only now surfacing, but that these are issues that have been there for a very long time. These are issues that have been there for a decade, 2 decades, and we still, to this day, don't have a plan even for the next 10 years in relation to what's going to happen in the inner city. So I mean, I think the unfortunate reality is what the situation that we are facing today, we are unlikely to see it being bettered unless there is a change of plans and there is a change in approach in how we are going to deal with the housing issues in the inner city. Because I think what's really important and what we really need to turn this city around is that we really need to be looking at how do we house poor people in the inner city who are really in desperate need for accommodation, and to remove them from, you know, situations such as the ones that we are currently talking about. I mean, I think you know that there are hundreds and hundreds of buildings that are in a similar situation, where today we are speaking about, you know, a disaster that came through a fire. And it's quite possible that very soon, and God forbid, that we will be speaking about a disaster where a building fell and collapsed on people, simply because there have not been, you know, proper processes that have been put in place to ensure the safety of people, and where there are emergencies where people need to be relocated, that they are found with alternative accommodation, instead of blaming poor people for their poverty, and also in such an incident like this one, where we are actually even blaming them for their death.
Well, definitely, Edward. And also, you know, I just want to raise a similar question to Mpho, where, you know, as Edward say, blaming these poor people for their deaths. And this was predictable, where the building had not even finished smoldering. We've seen we've seen the blame game being played as well. We've seen the Speaker of Johannesburg blaming NGOs. We've seen the minister in the presidency, where the minister said blaming foreigners and denied that we even had a housing crisis. And that was one. We've seen the president himself, President Cyril Ramaphosa. He did not blame anybody, but he says this is a wake-up call. He speaks about ineffective laws, governance, and general criminality dominating the housing crisis. We've seen the mayor for the weekend, Kenny Kunene, blaming foreigners and calling for mass deportations. Now, all of this was playing out while the building was still being burned, while people were still dying, while people were not identified in the mortuaries, while people were not even buried. Now, clearly, that sends a very, very strong message, sends a very, very powerful message. And again, brings us, do we really have this caring government when we see the type of blame game that is being played out?
To your point, I think it's very important to also look at the fact that it was not a surprise to the government what happened. Every single government receives status reports. We have an entire state security department. We've got officials that are paid, risk and safety officers that are paid monthly salaries. We've got government officials whose jobs are to actually ensure these things don't happen. We had people that had called for many days and had spoken about some of the issues. There were even reports that spoke about some of the structural issues in the building. And you only find that politicians only come in the last hour when lives have been lost. And to them, when they arrive, they are not talking about the work they've been doing because they haven't been doing any work. They are simply playing the blame game. So it really talks about a government that we've got that is not progressive. And, where we come from in Arise South Africa, we come from a place where young people that are part of this democracy, that are realizing that we are delaying ourselves as young people and as South Africans by hoping that this government will change. There's an old saying that says, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them the first time around. But this government and these officials that are put in the city of Johannesburg, they've showed us all who they are. And, it's not only the first time that we are seeing this, we continually seeing this. And it comes a time where we, even as citizens that care about our country and that are human, we also need to begin to realize, to say, perhaps we're at fault. We are not choosing to believe them. We keep believing that maybe they'll make a difference. We'll keep believing that maybe they are really changing something. Whereas year in and year out, they are doing the same thing. And when something like this happens, we need a completely new thing. We need new people in power. We need a new government that is going to be able to take care of the people that we as individuals can form. And that's what we've done under the banner of Arise South Africa. We are calling on all South Africans to say, enough is enough. We can no longer blame, the government and continue to blame them because they've showed us who they are. They don't care about people. Let us who care about people, who are South Africans, let us come together under the umbrella of Arise South Africa and formulate a movement that can go ahead and represent the values that we believe in. Tonight, the values that we believe in, it stems from good governance. It stems from the fact that no one should be poor. We should not be having people living in poverty. And in South Africa, we've got over 50% of the population living in poverty. Yet these things continue and politicians continue to benefit from it. When we looked into some of the reports that we've been getting and some emails that people have been sent to us, we are receiving shocking information. We are receiving information of people that have been able to write off tax that they were owing just based on them buying a dead building and not caring and soliciting cash out of people, and they continue to have tax write-offs. We've heard of officials that literally own these buildings and run it like a mafia style. We've heard of people that go into these buildings being promised jobs, and when they enter the buildings, they are robbed at gunpoint, and they can't report this anywhere because these buildings are not being looked after properly, and they're not actually being serviced properly. And as a result of this, we begin to realize that the government has been turning a blind eye on the problems and the issues of the people in the city of Johannesburg. And we as citizens need to make sure that we empower individuals that we believe in, that we put in with a mandate. Because for very long, we've been seeing the same thing happen. These political parties come and they do the same thing. And that's why at Arise South Africa, we decided to stand up to say, you know what, as young people, we are standing up, although that support is difficult and, we don't have criminals backing us or certain people backing us. We are actually funding this with our own money as young people. But we've decided to take a stand to say, come 2024 in the national election, the blood of these people that was shed innocently so We need to ensure that this is corrected. And the best way to do so is by making sure that they feel it, the politicians, that they cannot mess around with people's lives and nothing happens to them.
Well, Amir, it is clear that they have been messing around with people's lives. And Amir, perhaps, you'll be able to articulate better, just as far as foreigners and migrants in South Africa go, how serious is the housing crisis? When you have the minister in the presidency say there is no housing crisis, when you have the number one citizen, the president of the country saying this is a wake-up call for ineffective laws. Whose laws are they? They're the government's laws. Governance and general criminality dominating the crisis that apparently does not exist. So what he's saying, criminals have dominated the housing crisis, but he says there is no crisis. That means there is no shortage of accommodation. Just, if you could tell, just, obviously for the benefit of our listeners, for the viewers and for the panel tonight, just take us through this crisis. What do migrants actually go through in this country to overcome this problem, or to even find a roof over their head?
Brother Inayat, the fact of the matter is there is a crisis in housing and there is issues of land. That is why, at least today, we see that even the greedy politicians themselves, when they are soliciting votes, and this is actually the right time to look for votes, the issue of actually land actually comes out on the forefront. Remember, we are in a country that is very unequal. One man can actually own an area equivalent to actually Mayfair, where I actually currently am, whereas actually, a group of 1,000 can live. 1,000, can live in a deplorable housing, actually, like the actually Usindiso that actually we are now talking about. So the issue of housing, especially in the inner city and in the city of Johannesburg and in the Gauteng province, is something that is actually, cannot be right off, considering the fact that, whereas the European looks, those who were colonized actually by the British looks actually at London, or others actually have the New York, Johannesburg actually carries the hope and aspiration of every migrant, especially those from frontier countries that are neighboring South Africa, be it Zimbabwe, be it Eswatini, Lesotho, and etc. And being actually the commercial city, everybody actually have got an ambition to further his lives actually will come here. But having an uncaring government that actually blames only migrants on the wolves need to actually answer this question. And I think in this panel, Brian, what day you are supposed also to bring at least one of these MMCs actually, especially the likes of the Kenny Kunene, who are making a lot of unnecessary noise outside, but cannot account for what actually this department was actually meant to be. But being a migrant or even being a South African working class, the situation is very same. The issue of the land is actually there. We have got actually challenges. And if there is no challenges of actually housing in the inner city and the surroundings, we could not actually have a dilapidated house like Usindiso, which is almost earmarked for demolition, hosting closer to 1,000 people. So this is real, and it's the right time actually the government, at all three tiers of government, smell the coffee and come out, because what happened in Usindiso, we may not want actually a repeat, but nothing will stop. If the God is not so caring, nothing will actually stop actually a disaster of 10 times fold of actually what happened happening in this. Because if you look at the deplorable condition that the migrant and the local working class South African are living, it's something actually, as a human being, you cannot take it. I may actually give credit to former executive mayor, Herman Mashaba. Despite actually being anti-immigrant himself, he have done two things, and those things that need to be commended. One issue was at least he left behind a clean city. His campaign that was initiated actually called Arise Betseng, which was actually, he borrowed from a campaign in Rwanda called Umuganda, where actually the citizens come out and clean, was an initiative and a legacy that Mashaba have left. At least we did not have these bottles we are having now. At least we have a clean city. And he had a committee, and I was actually part of actually that, where every month at least he could actually call for those concerned actually residents and community about actually the housing. And it is true. He have actually earmarked this 500 and plus. And at least he had a vision to do something, despite even being loggerhead with him on issues of actually migration and his endless sentiments, which tantamount to hatred of which we even once took him to South African Human Rights Commission. He had at least a vision, but at least he couldn't achieve his vision because of this endless actually wrangle. But to be sincere, and the part in short is, to the working class, this is a very major concern.
Thank you for that, Amir. Just to get back to Edward. Now, Edward, when one looks at this legacy, and I pointed this out in my introduction as well, this Marshalltown disaster is going to leave a legacy once again of humiliation, injustice, racism, and all of that actually put together. We've seen the government now come up, and now they've pulled out the big guns to find out, to investigate, to find out who is to blame for this. Yet, in the last 40 odd minutes that we have been talking, there's just so much we've unpacked. And I'm not too sure whether you actually need a commission to investigate, because these are the facts. This is reality that is actually staring us in the face.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that we did see in the wake of this crisis is a spotlight on issues of housing and accommodation in the inner city. And I mean, I think one can just hope that this coordination that we are seeing now will actually result in something, and that, once the cameras are away, that we don't go back to the status quo where nothing is being done in terms of the work of the inner city. So, I mean, I think let's give the commission space to do its work. But I mean, these things generally take a long time. And so while the commission is doing its work, we should hope that the municipality comes on board to ensure that basic services are provided to buildings in the inner city, particularly now as an emergency, and that is done at a citywide scale, particularly with issues of water, because many of these buildings don't actually even have access to water services. And so while there is a long-term issue of the commission doing its work, and probably it will do it quite promptly, we also need to be looking at what are the lived conditions of people in the interim, and what are the issues that need to be solved right now. And so, I mean, I think the provision of basic services is an important one, especially, but not just exclusive to water services.
Yes, and also coming back to Mpho, just need your thoughts on this commission that has been set up. Now, we've seen the Gauteng Premier, we've seen Panyaza Lesufi obviously talking about the commission, about investigating these hijacked buildings, what caused the fire, who should be held accountable for the tragedy. But again, asking this commission to obviously investigate further, urging affected communities to make submissions, to work with the commission to get to the bottom of this problem of hijacked buildings. But again, this is a commission. It's out on a fact-finding mission, but a lot of it has been common knowledge for a very, very long time. And coming back to Amir Sheikh and speaking about his interaction with Herman Mashaba, this is information that was on hand. All of it it's not something new. And this is the scary part. We set up all these commissions of inquiry. We spend a lot of money. We spend millions on these commissions. And at the end of the day, we hope that, something meaningful actually comes out of all of this. Or is it just another commission and their work is done and we go back to square one again?
One of the biggest concerning things is the fact that in this country, we had the Zondo Commission, where about R1 billion was spent, or over R1 billion was spent on the Zondo Commission. If you look at what came out of it, you realize that we have an issue of commissions not functioning properly. And what I really want to say is, more than a commission in today's day and age, it is easy to formulate information, and it is easy to ask people to actually account to things. In today's day and age, we have platforms where people can come in and they can speak, just like the platform we're on at the moment, or people can write, or people can even go to government offices, because the government does have facilities where they can have a meeting with those citizens. So I truly believe that a commission is not what is needed. I think that it is just a way to elongate things or to sound fancy, like they're doing their job. I think what is needed is for people to do their job, for actual officials to actually do their job. You know, if you look at the rates and taxes that people pay in the city of Johannesburg, these are citizens that pay these rates and taxes. The city collects a lot in terms of rates and taxes, and it has a duty to ensure that those that are not adhering to the rules, those that are not doing things properly, are actually brought to book. There are people whose job it is to ensure that these things are done. And when you are now calling in a commission, when you already have departments and people who are supposed to do the job, you are clearly failing to discipline in your ranks the people that have not done their jobs properly. And what we see it as you are part of the problem. Because if you can't discipline your subordinates, if you can't immediately call those that are supposed to be responsible to order, it means that it's a syndicate and everybody in the loop is involved. And as a result of that, we reject this commission and we say, we are tired of such commissions. We expect action, and that action not being done, we expect that come next year, there must be a change in the city.
Well, certainly there has to be. And also, Amir, you know, you spoke about people in shelters, people that you are assisting. And I know Salam Media had actually sent out our team to go and talk to some of the people, to the survivors. And when one hears the stories of the survivors, it's actually very, very heartbreaking, because all these people had was the clothing on their backs. And also, we're just looking at the visuals of the funeral that had taken place out in Lenasia, where 7 of the victims were actually buried on Sunday evening, if my memory serves me right. Now, all of this obviously put together tells us that, you know, we've got communities, we have people within communities that are prepared, that show empathy, that show sympathy for these victims. We even know that a call was made out to the Gift of the Givers to come out and assist and even give food to the firemen. So we do have the people. I don't think there is a problem in terms of society being sympathetic, showing empathy for victims of any disaster, because this country has proven over and over again, NGOs, other organizations, relief organizations, they've always come. During the COVID era, we've seen all of that, where we've seen millions come out of non-governmental organizations to assist people. Now, the key issue here is, but all of this is playing out, which is good enough, but we still have a government that is not taking responsibility. We still have a government that is not, shouldering any responsibility for their actions, but also in terms of assisting, serious intent of assisting these people.
Brother, what day the fact of the matter is, before even I come to that point, may I also put a quick input on actually the commission that is actually said by Premier Lesufi himself, whereas as an organization we welcome it, but actually we are not optimistic. The end result of it will actually be that, will it be actually something that at least will be tangible and something will come out of it? Considering the fact that from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission to date, the Zondo Commission, which billions have been spent, the outcome cannot actually match the inputs, the efforts and the money that they put. But we welcome the Premier for taking an initiative and at least setting a commission that will be headed by Justice Khambembe. We will actually put our input there, but we're not optimistic the end result will be. But coming to South Africa, South Africans and the relief organization and the faith-based organization, it is true that we have got uncaring government, and it is uncaring because, you know, you beget bad things, bad things. So it's us, actually, the electorate are needed to be blamed now, because we choose actually the worst, and you cannot expect the best to come out from the worst. And I agree with my brother from Rice Muzanzi. We are going to election next year, and we must be wise this time. We mustn't actually vote with our tummy. I understand the vast majority of the electorate are actually people of actually disadvantage, but we must actually vote with our conscience. But coming to the South Africans and how actually they assisted, if it is not the faith-based organization, the Muslim charitable organization, the South African Council of Churches, the Jewish Board of Deputies, I'm sure at least we could have actually have high death due to actually starvation. But because we have got a caring South Africans, we have got a caring relief organization, we have caring faith-based organization, at least the victims cannot tonight actually go into bed actually hungry. The shelter they were put by the city is also in deplorable condition, but by all means and by working with all association and organization and individual, we will actually try that at least all these working class who have been affected will go back at least and have a shelter more decent than the one they were actually before, so that at least they can go actually out there and hustle as they were using it actually before. And one last thing is that at least currently we have actually started of all this organization and distribution site. And as we come closer to closure now of the program, at least I would like also Brother Inayat to share that at least we are currently using the African Diaspora Forum office, which is situated on number 47 Sour Street at the Star Building opposite Luduli House. If there is any of the listeners is willing to actually donate anything, be it perishable goods, be it stuff, be it anything that will actually have a meaning actually to the victim, we welcome distribution. We are open every day, Monday to Saturday, with the exception of Sunday. We are on actually the medium floor, and we can actually be reached. And I think towards the end, we will give a number which you can actually share. But we're also grateful to the media, like the Salam Media Foundation and all those who have highlighted. And far beyond that, also organization, the burial committees, the Sabri Chistis, the Fordsburg Muslim Youth Organization, the Central Islamic Trust, among others, who have came out and buried actually the deceased at no cost and who are willing to undertake this. So we cannot take. But what makes South Africa actually, the best is it have got its caring actually people. So salute to the constituency of South Africans, unlike the uncaring government.
Yes, I see we've got about 6 minutes to go, and I know both Amir and Mpho need to be out by 8 o'clock. So I'll just go around the panelists. Edward, starting with you, give me about a minute or two just to round up.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Wadi. No, I mean, I think the important thing is that we should not forget the lives of those who died in this tragic incident, and that we should press on the city as people of this country and the people of Johannesburg. We should, do all our best to ensure that we call on the government to take accountability for the work that they should be doing. We should be demanding more of them as society. And I mean, I think we should offer our support where it is necessary to ensure that together we can build a city that is welcoming of people who are of low income, and also is welcoming of those who are in need of housing and opportunities in the city. Let us build a city that reflects the humanity that we all have, and also one that is able to advance the human good for all. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Edward. Mpho, final thoughts from you?
Thank you so much, firstly, for such media platforms that take in consideration the lives of people and that actually care. We at Arise South Africa are building a new South Africa, and we need as much support, as many hands, as many members that want to get started with us. You are able to register your membership at arisesouthafrica.org. And really what we're a new generation of people that are saying we won't sit back and watch things get worse. We will actually fold up our hands and get involved to ensure that, the poor and disenfranchised are well taken care of, our economy can function, and that this country can run in a way that it's supposed to. because South Africa is a superpower. South Africa has minerals. We are well endowed with so many things that can make this country work. We just need the people that are willing to do the work and ensure that come 2024, we are ready for government. Now, I want to call on anybody who wants to support us. Please feel free to support us. Go to our website. You can find me on social media. It's at Mpho Dagada. We are more than willing to work together with you, and we thank you and this platform. And thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure as well, Mpho. And Amir, final thoughts, and you were going to share that number with us as well.
Jazakallah khair, brother. Okay, in conclusion, I'll just like to make two announcements. Tomorrow at around 5 p.m. after work at 87 the Court Street in Braamfontein, the working class actually who are concerned much about this will be having a meeting to deliberate on this. On actually Friday at 10 o'clock at Central Methodist Church, the South African Council of Churches, Gauteng Province, will also be holding a mass memorial service for the victims actually of the number 80 Albert Street. Anyone willing actually from the faith-based organization is actually more than welcome. The service will start at 10 and it will start at the Central Methodist Church. But anyone willing to donate in any kind, this is organization that have come together. We are different, but what brought us together is also actually the concern we have and how to assist actually this. We are at the Star Building. The Star Building is situated on number 47 Sour Street. It is now Isaac Kaseme Street. We are on actually the mezzanine level, and we can be reached on 011 633 277. 011 633 2177. And anyone willing to actually even come and assist and volunteer maybe with the packaging of goods, and actually the close is more than welcome. We are open from 8:30 in the morning till 5 p.m. Shukran wa salamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yes, to you, Edward Molopi, and also President Mpho Dagada, Amir, Sheikh, to all the three of you gentlemen, we do appreciate you taking time out and being part of this panel discussion right here on Salam Media on Wednesday nights with myself, Inayat Wali. We wish you all the best, and please take care.
Jazakallah wa salamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Well, that brought us to the end of part one of tonight's discussion right here on Salam Media, and at around 8:30, we will be joined live by embattled public protector Pusisiwe Mqwebane this evening, and that's going to be at around 8:30, where she'll be joining us for half an hour. We know what has happened. She has been suspended pending the outcome of the hearing, and she returned to office today, and she was told that she could not return to office, and we know that a vote is actually going to be taking place in Parliament. So we will be talking with the public protector this evening at around 8:30. So for now, we're going to go for a break, and looking forward to being in your company once again at around 8:30 this evening.